Colleagues, I'm very glad to welcome you all. My name is Kateryna Chuyeva. I'm the head of Archaeologists Association of Ukraine, coordinator of Network of Heritage of ANTS NGO, and I have the honor to moderate two panels at this symposium. It has been a lot of time during which we were constructing this conversation. I hope it won't be just informal and structured, but it will give us some reference points and develop our subsequent actions of this center, while understanding how this center, as a new structure of the university, will be able to influence what's going on in our heritage sphere, how the academia can help with it, because for me, as for many other participants in this sphere, we lack elementary things. We lack time to think over our decisions, to analyze in depth what it takes to get to the result and to suggest appropriate solutions. Today, we did our best to collect not just those who care, but those with whom we would love to work further on and whose opinion at this initial stage is critical for us. Unfortunately, not all colleagues managed to join us for various reasons, but I hope that this conversation, which will be recorded now, it is also online, will provide us a strategy and trajectory of our movement. The first today's conversation is related to general context and what's going on in the domain of heritage, challenges, priorities, and strategies. The idea of this panel was to avoid just only welcoming words from people who make decisions in the sphere. We wanted us to have a live conversation with each other. That's why, with great joy, I'm inviting Ivan Verbytsky, First Deputy Minister of Culture of Ukraine, and Specialized Heritage Sector Deputy Anatoliy Khromov, PhD, Head of the State Archival Service, Darina Nadzelska, who is a project coordinator, project manager in culture in UNESCO Ukraine, and I invite Ms. Alla Buispich, correspondent of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine and director of Archaeology Institute of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, PhD in historical sciences, historical studies. And I join you as a moderator. Everybody has microphone as far as I see. I'll do my best not to hit the screen. Colleagues, we planned 45 minutes for this work. We've been a bit lagging back. I hope we still have enough time to speak through. My first question is, we will have two rounds of discussions. We will try to fix where we are and why we are heading in the direction where we are heading to. Once again, we would like to avoid the situation which is very widespread in the majority of events when everyone arrives with their presentations and they report on their work, but there is no chance to have a proper conversation with each other. That's why we decided to avoid conversation only. We decided to avoid presentations and we focus on talking to each other. I have a question to Mr. Ivan, because as I know, the Ministry of Culture is the biggest player in the Ukrainian cultural heritage, the body that shapes the policies in terms of heritage, the body that cooperates with a lot of actors in Ukraine and abroad in this sphere. That's why the first question is to you, Mr. Ivan. Where are we now? What does the ministry take care of currently, and what are the biggest challenges in your work? What have you seen throughout your office time, and which priorities have you picked for yourself, and why exactly such priorities and not some other? One can answer these questions for days. During the war, That's an important characteristic that identifies a lot of things. Among other things, it means that heritage is expensive, because in order to preserve heritage and develop it, you need a lot of money, which now we lack, because the money which we did our best to allocate for heritage now are redirected to other things. And that's a big challenge, how to return the money in the direction of heritage to make sure it works, because otherwise we can discuss for a long time about more or less efficient system of protection, preservation, and bureaucracy. But if we have zero resources, just physically to rebuild, recover, brick over brick, some bricks start falling apart. Another part of this, and by the way, the war brings a lot of destruction. And another part of it refers to museum collections, museum items, their evacuation. And partially that's an issue of money. The problem is sometimes not exactly with money, but in immense human tragedies of people who were dedicating their lives, soul, and all free time just to pack up all the museum items, yet having very little salaries. And still they hoped to return to the place from which they took away those museum items. But, you know, this motivation is always very challenging. That packing up was quite of a blow, which required a lot of love and care. Talks about how that must be done correctly, on the one hand preserving cultural artifacts, but on the other hand preserving people, because museums consist of collections around which everything functions, but on another hand those are people, because people create museum, and vice versa. Having wonderful artifacts, you won't be able to have a good museum. Those are the first and foremost things, but of course heritage is something that is very much related to the issue of limitations that heritage preservation lays on various possibilities to do something in cities. And often it is related to some issues of construction and something else. And that's another big bunch of problems which relates to very specific legislation and very specific issues in which very few people do understand the situation and can interpret correctly all the regulations that have been accumulated.
And the idea that the matter of construction and the preservation of the heritage items is a difficult matter. And it's not that you can just say, I mean, of course you can say that you can build up tomorrow or build nothing, but none of these options are acceptable. So in what way? Not for how do we manage to unravel this without damaging anything? So I think it could be a step-by-step building up of trust and setting some rules and practices in place, but there aren't any yet. But this is a complex and long-lasting work that requires years of work, investment of efforts for these mechanisms of interaction and mutual respect to be in place. So that's where efforts, time, and resources are to be invested in, and that's what we are trying to do. Thank you. So in fact, we start with work with people, and then documents, regulations, and so on, because until the trust is built, as far as I understand, The other range of solutions is not irrelevant. It's just, you just need to understand, if the person gets some official document in line with the law to do something, and if you don't do it, there you'll be fined with 17,000 hryvnias, which is not that much, but still not zero. And then after there are a few fines that were not paid, you can of course sue them, but it's not still the efficient mechanism to regulate. Do I understand it correctly that you are working on interaction with other participants to the process? Like, for example, if we speak about the evacuation, we always have to interact with the military administrations, with the regional administrations, right? And is this process ongoing? Yeah, all of these processes are the ones that include many stakeholders. Like it usually is in the public governance sphere. So without interaction with them, the people who are part of these processes, whether we like them or not, they need to be interacted with. And there are wonderful cases of conflicts, like both on the national level and each specific case, or on the level of some city. When, for example, the city mayor and the reserve manager trying to share their powers. But I think that we need to seek for interaction, and also there are moments where the interests diverge, and you cannot meet each other in the middle. If one person wants to destroy the site, another wants to preserve it, you can't save half of it. Neither of the parties will agree, and there could be some, court decisions, because some cases are considered in the courtroom. And we're saying, like, there's a certain process. Let's wait for the results, and let's believe in justice. And justice, that's another big topic, but we believe that it will be served. Thank you. Well, since there were already certain resolutions in place, like the resolution on the evacuation of the museum collections, I know the work is ongoing, a number of other documents. So which steps are we looking forward to? Like, what legislative changes are envisaged? Or is it too soon to tell? Well, from time to time they do take place. We find some places where there's a lack of something, or something doesn't work properly, or let's say a number of resolutions are to be developed in line with the law and to be adopted, but for some years they're still not there. And that's also due to the interests of different stakeholders, where they have conflict of interests, and it cannot resolve it that easily. But then there are also some applicable situations which require attention. For example, as for the evacuation, like the resolution was adopted in February, but I wouldn't say that before February this evacuation was held. I'm not saying that nobody knew what to do without piece of legislation, but some new documents, they occur when there's some social problem, and it has to be regulated properly to tackle this or that problem. And then there are also problems like, for example, the churches and the way they manage the sanctuaries. What interaction should there be between the church, like the St. Sofievska Cathedral and other facilities? And despite some, there is the order in place. It's not perfect, and it doesn't work properly. And the churches and the sanctuaries say that we have to do it in a new way. So we are looking for this new way of interaction, so that the wolves would be fed and the sheep would be fine. And there are a few matters like this. Thank you. I will go back to you in the second round of our questions. And now I would like to give floor to Anatoliy Khromov. With mesmerization, we have been observing what you do, the scale of digitalization of their archival collections. And I think never, ever in the history, I suspect, there is such a scale of available documents in the archives, especially in the country that's at war. And my question is, which challenges do you see as the most critical ones currently? And is preservation of the documental heritage become the priority of the society and the state? So what do you see the situation is like? What priorities do you have as the head of the big direction? And Ivan did say that the Ministry of Culture and the Ministry have certain misunderstandings that need to be regulated. And the archives used to be like a separate world for quite a while. And when we talk about heritage, very rarely it was also tackled. Thank you for the invitation. Well, if I was giving this interview to the media right now and talking about 53 million digitalized documents that were issued last year only at my cadence, almost 150 million together. So we keep on accumulating, and everybody's used to this digital revolution that is ongoing in the Ukrainian archival sector in the past few years. But unfortunately, I have a feeling that currently this is our limit. And it is the limit not because I can't organize partners to join. I've never thought about the state in the part of budgets, yes, for digitalization, because what we do is without budget money. When I held the position, I already understood that there's a task in front of me, but no resources to do it. And I did agree to do so. And after all, we have many partners from all over the world, from the US, from Poland, the Czech Republic, Israel, many, also Ukrainian NGOs who, together with the Ukrainian archives, are demonstrating this digital boom. And a small remark. By the way, we're going to try to learn who did or who didn't do, because we have applied the nomination for the UNESCO program, the Jigju Premium, which is awarded for making accessible and preservation of the documental heritage. So our digital program has been applied. And at least then in the world there will be recognition that this wasn't done, and this has to be awarded. The work of the Ukrainian archivists has to be rewarded. When I speak about the limit, it lies in the following. There are many opportunities during the war. And I would like to thank one more time the representatives of the civilized world who did not leave Ukraine all alone in this challenging times. And clearly there's understanding of our needs and even the scale of issues in Ukraine. Ukraine is the biggest European state with one of the biggest archival systems. But you cannot always put these projects into place because there's lack of human capital. People are leaving from the archival sphere. And not only archival. This is the problem of many cultural institutions. And there is staffing hunger, even in business. And even before the war, we were the least funded sphere. So clearly that 4 years plus of full-scale invasion, and people are leaving and join other spheres. And this is the big issue. Because, for example, I can go to the Czech partners and agree about internship one of the biggest schools of the paper documents restoration in the Czech Republic. I sent people to do internship there, and they check which new pieces of equipment they have, and using different partners and bring it, for example, the special equipment or machines which manages to restore the damaged sheets of paper. And the person with skills and pieces of equipment go back to Ukraine, where they are expected, where 7,500,000 hryvnias as a salary is waiting for them. That's all. So on the one hand, you are limited as the civil servant with some critical remarks, but I wouldn't say that the resources of that there is no state resource at all. People in my position sometimes complain and say that the authorities didn't do this, didn't do that, but who knows the system of bureaucratic relations? You know how hard it is to lobby for certain things, especially in the part of the increased funding. And there are ministries who always say they have no money, and they can say that in a different way. They could say, like, of course we don't mind it, but we need to have a comprehensive decision in place. But on the other hand, if you see that certain billions of the state funds are allocated to produce some content, but at the same time the material base of cultural institutions is not covered, underfunded. So then the motivation of my colleagues drops in such scenario. And we are now talking before the summer kicks in, but I'm constantly thinking about solar panels somehow, solar stations, because the digital boom of Ukrainian archives will lose sense if there is outages, which will definitely going to happen probably during the heat in the summer and also in the winter time, just like we had this winter. Obviously, it's not that simple with our international partners, because they are very much willing to have that format. Yes, you like to have the exchange of experience, to participate in symposiums and conferences. And it's a bit more complicated with the material base when some equipment is needed, especially if it's not something like one piece of it only, but when it actually costs some money, some amount. But we don't stop. We have no other options. So going back to what the society sees, obviously it's the phenomenon that the war is ongoing, but the archives are digitalized probably faster than anywhere else. And they would have been published even faster if we had the funding in place. Because I just want to clearly communicate my vision to you. We can find and cover the digitalization of funds, because the strategy is very simple. We are open. Our documental, archival heritage is part of the world heritage. So come to us, all who's willing, and we can digitalize it, because at any point of time this can be destroyed. And this is an argumentation which is clear in any language, but the matter of proper storage conditions, at least of some, current repairs. I'm not speaking about the modernized or upgraded storage facilities, but this is the duty of the state to do that at least. Thank you. Okay, you made a few remarks that we will address a bit later in the second round. So, dear colleagues, we will try to have a few minutes to have Q&A session. For the questions for the panelists. And since Anatoliy has already referred to UNESCO, let's now switch to you. UNESCO, from the very beginning, they were actively participating in all processes which began after February 24th, 2022. And the colleague of the second committee, they were the ones who actually offered the practical assistance. They said, we will help you with our hands to produce certain documents in order to have the status of enhanced protection, and given in what condition all of the teams were then and how people were scattered in different regions and no proper communication in place, and not being able to use the regular systems for document circulation, it all was very complicated. So any support from international partners back then was critically important. And then UNESCO has stabilized their work, and they took a step, as far as I understand, that was extraordinary, because they have established the office in the time of war in Ukraine. Then they started helping not in the post-conflict situation, as it usually happens, but in the process. And they also have provided in-kind support, so helping out with financial tools and with equipment and so on. So could you please tell us what is your vision of the key challenges and priorities that are ahead of you? What do you respond to, and how do you respond to it? And what has already been done by you, which seems to be the most efficient one? So where are you heading next? Thank you, Kateryna, for your question. Thank you for the invitation. And first of all, I would like to tell you Madam Chiara, her greetings, sends her greetings, and she couldn't have joined us today because she's on the road. That's why she couldn't even come to us online, but she's with us and she's sending her best regards. So indeed, you are quite right. That opening the office in the conditions of the war, it was a non-standard solution for UNESCO. It was rather unusual, and the office is here as of 2022, and as of 2022 until 2025, UNESCO managed to mobilize support for 72 million USD, both financial and in-kind, on different directions within their mandate, of course. So not only culture, but also education and science, media. And this way, the main UNESCO priorities in this period of time were divided into three categories. First of all, it's documenting of damages and proper registration, not only of the damages, but also documenting the heritage in order to preserve as many as possible of data about these cultural heritage objects, which will help in the process of recovery next.
The second direction, and actually in the sector related to documenting, it's all about monitoring, remote and on-site. Among other things, it comprises missions. For example, it was 270 missions conducted in the regions that were the most damaged as a result of Kakhovka Dam tragedy. UNESCO supported such archaeological missions to document those damages. On the other hand, it is about preservation of culture and heritage in all its shapes. It includes not only, like in the first years, it was more sporadic assistance, ad hoc assistance to the damaged sites. Now the focus is more at creating conditions for an all-around recovery, administration of preservation, conservation or preservation, not preservation in the Ukrainian terminology, like but keeping them safe and secure, and creating preconditions so that this recovery was in the framework of the general recovery and rebuilding programs of Ukraine, to make sure that the culture as a whole is not perceived as something least important, because it is the engine of the recovery of Ukraine. And UNESCO sets priority here because it gets synchronized with the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine. They create interministerial partnerships so that culture is perceived as an engine and as a catalyzer for this recovery. Another direction, third direction, which is really important, Mr. Anatoliy has mentioned the lack of specialists, which we observe currently, and support of experts, support of pre-qualification, professional development, training of experts. That is one of the priorities for UNESCO. This support is implemented through partnerships, and among other things today we're speaking about partnerships with educational institutions, with institutes, and that's an enormous resource because it allows training new, fresh specialists, involving them not just into some theoretical studies, but to have hands-on training on the job. Those are the main priorities, actually, and we plan to continue during the following 2 years. That is a focus on training, raising the qualification and requalification of experts. In particular, that's support to researchers, grant programs for researchers, equipment, including remote equipment, that is favoring interministerial cooperation and integration of culture into recovery programs, using, among other things, the tools and framework documents which UNESCO was developing in partnership with other organizations like World Bank, speaking about the framework agreement bureau that is culture in recovery of cities, of city heritage. With this goal, we are planning to support the Recovery Office under the auspices of the ministry, which was founded with financing of the government of Spain through UNESCO, and will be supported further on. There was an interministerial meeting in course of which they plan to discuss in which way culture can be included into the investment programs and how we can ensure this allocation of that percentage for culture in terms of recovery of infrastructure. And another workshop, among other plans, involving the World Bank and UNESCO, is the methodology of Cure, which is a critical tool to ensure recovery of cities. Thank you. Thank you, Kateryna. In the end, I will ask you a question about the formats, how to join for experts, how to join for civilians. It's the first time that we gathered here in such a composition, and I hope that it will be first but not last meeting. Archaeological heritage is one of those that fall victims to the war immensely, and we understand the scale of those losses. As you see today, the biggest challenges from your side, what are the priorities that should be considered by the state and by research organizations, educational organizations, international partners, to make sure we can preserve as much as we can what we can? Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Kateryna, in person. I would like to start with a banal phrase like Ukraine has faced challenges, and all the 4.5 years of this war, even the today's horrible night confirmed this. It is impossible to imagine what we will have to face tomorrow. The humanitarian sector is suffering like little kids. And rephrasing the deputy minister, in order to have what to protect, on top of the financial component of it, we need to understand what and which number of objects we need to protect in terms of archaeological heritage. That's a part of the European archaeological heritage. And we cannot discuss some heritage sites without the context of Asian, Southern, or Western European, or Northern European context. So what we have at this moment, there is no single country in the world and not a single continent where the representatives of the state structures caring for archaeological heritage would be able to say specifically the number of archaeological heritage sites they have. And Ukraine is not an exclusion. When an archaeologist starts excavating, they don't even know that there can be 3 or 4 or 5 more sites underneath the place where they are digging. The thing that we have now is really challenging situation. We have no idea how many archaeological heritage sites Ukraine has, because it started more than 1 million years ago till current time, because even the First World War is a part of the world archaeology and the part of Ukrainian archaeology. And now, related to what the Archaeology Museum deals with, because I have the honor of working there more than 40 years. According to its Articles of Association, that's a research organization that must perform fundamental archaeological research in old history. And as was correctly mentioned by Darina, the war forced us to make non-standard decisions. And first, we made a question on studying the deoccupied territories, studying and researching the archaeological sites of those territories once the Russian troops were kicked out from the territory of the Kiev and Chernihiv regions. And it should be mentioned once again that with the silent support of the state, thanks God that the state does not forbid us to do that, we managed to find the financial component for the piloting project with the German Research Institute. That's the oldest worldwide archaeological institution, founded in the end of the 19th century in the center in Berlin, with which we have fruitful and long-standing creative relations. And the German Archaeological Institute, during 2 years in 22 and 23, financed the work of a specially created monitoring expedition. Even more so, by the results of the functioning of this monitoring expedition, I made a speech at the meeting of the presidency of the Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, where this research was standing as a separate line in the list of priorities, priority research for the Academy of Sciences of Ukraine. We have all sorts of support in that, among other things, moral support. Concerning the protection of archaeological heritage, UNESCO office in Ukraine and our institute have received certain financing for studying the condition of heritage sites in the river banks. We were forbidden to do that in Kherson region, but we were allowed to do that in Mykolaiv region. Civilians were allowed to arrive, but with support of UNESCO, we conducted monitoring expedition in this region. Currently, all the works have been suspended because of the threat for human lives, but in such or another shape in the regions where it is possible to work, like Kyiv region, partially Chernihiv region, and others, still experienced archaeologists inspect the condition of archaeological sites. Those are hundreds of archaeological sites and thousands of square kilometers of territory. Starting from 22, we've started recording how damage made by bombardment. A very great example, Chernihiv, wonderful city, old Rus, Kievan Rus burial site. I was in the composition of our exposition in our team in Makariv to the west of Kyiv, where Grad MLRS shell hit the burial site. And there are many similar examples. But the monitoring expeditions have worked a certain algorithm of work, of records, of choosing the sites in terms of their priority, to cluster all the different sites together, not just to inspect one, but to inspect several ones, to meet with the local authorities and, of course, with the military administration. Without that, we would not be able to visit many sites because in some places where we arrived, there was burnt Russian equipment in 22. Those works were done in cooperation with our archaeologists colleagues from the Kyiv Taras Shevchenko University, with a lot of representatives of all sorts of NGOs and public organizations that do care about the condition of Ukrainian archaeological heritage. I hope that these works will be done further on, because it's not a secret that our defenders, the armed forces of Ukraine, must build certain digouts and defense structures. Unfortunately, we are at war, and those constructions can make their impact in the damage to the heritage sites. We hope that our experience will be of use, because all that information is stored. All the archaeologists present here, they know that they would love to start the works during the next season, but it will not be possible unless you submit your report, because the Ministry of Culture will not issue its permit for such works. This connection functions, and it's actually not that bad that it functions, because those who are unable to observe the algorithm just fall out. I'm sure that when the war ends, all those reports will be laid on the table of those who are preparing prosecutorial documents against those who damaged our historical objects. Thank you very much. I believe that now possibly we have discussed the things which are well known mostly to all the present people here. We have focused and recorded of the most painful things. And here I see a couple of items which unfortunately during wartime are impossible to resolve. But having the need to talk to people and to involve people, the first problem is to have resources to invest in infrastructure. And the second problem is the lack of understanding from the government and local self-governance bodies. And the last one, and here we will not dwell on the issues of transitional legislation and so on. There are all sorts of specialized events, even in the nearest time in Kiev and in other cities. But I would like to ask you, as far as all the present here work with politicians and with international organizations and donors involving certain funds for Ukraine, and on the other hand, they work with the public society. I have a question to Mr. Ivan. There have always been a demand to the ministry to involve public opinion. You have all sorts of boards and commissions and committees. From time to time, they organize working groups, but I'm sure. Do you plan to continue this coordination to make sure that the public has their voice? And secondly, how can we make our impact to make sure the international donors and partners supporting Ukraine could listen not just to their idea of the right way of supporting us, but also to their existing needs, because the practical history is the archives related, among other things, to archaeological heritage. Sometimes I'm told, like, please come here and help, but we don't have people. We cannot let you into the fund because we don't have people. We cannot scan documents because we don't have people who can scan that. Those problems are rotating over and over. And going from organization to organization, you face the same problems over and over. How do you develop solutions in your work with international organizations? I understand that works are ongoing, but what finds reflection in them, and how does public and expert organizations involve here? One more question which you can daze to answer. Firstly, we are trying to be transparent and open-minded, but in order to hear and to bring your opinion to the ministries in different ways, I hope we're successful in that. Not always this interaction, including the public, is successful. Sometimes we hear ideas. It's true that the ministry does know those ideas, but we lack understanding how to implement them.
В тому числі можна просто написати. Це теж працює.
One can write to us, it works. One can talk to us, it works not bad. On top of those structures with councils and other formalized tools of public participation, which do exist and which are used, actually.
Тут мені здається, що якщо є
So
бажання.
if there's a will and readiness to do something, then let's do it. As for the donors and many other spheres, I think this is the matter. You can't run in all directions at the same time because you will stand still. And sometimes this also about donors, relative, because this interaction can be built up step by step. You can't do everything at the same time. There are many needs and way more than resources that could be attracted. Even if we believe that they can be attracted, and yes, we have many pains, and sometimes you have to choose, prioritize where to allocate resources first, so that you are capable to do more afterwards. And sometimes that's a hard choice and a challenging discussion, because when we also compete with the Ministry of Energy and Ministry of Social Policy and Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Youth, and Ministry of Justice that is providing for the state archival service. So this is how it is. But sometimes the Ministry of Culture also finds money for construction of archives, which unfortunately are also being damaged or destroyed and require support. Somewhere we do have some national initiatives, really good ones, that bring money for the culture in one way or another. But that's something that could be viewed in two dimensions. We may say either this money is for content or for salaries. There's a wonderful idea for Ukrainian youth and children not to watch the Russian cartoons. We ought to show them Ukrainian cartoons. This idea seems like a good one. Obviously, that apart from the sanctions for Masha and Vedmedь cartoon, we can offer them Ukrainian cartoon. And the state can do it, finally. And this seems to be a wonderful initiative. And if it is successful, it may show that money in culture, that's success. And if money is invested in culture, it's a success on one hand, but it also brings success to the left and to the right and here and there. And this could be beneficial for everyone around. This is the approach which can bring us to this aim for money to be in the sphere of culture and heritage, and building it all up and looking for the interaction and cooperation or opportunities where they are. It can be construed step by step. Thank you. Okay, I saw the response of Anatoliy to certain of your statements, and since we are pressed for time, and of course we want to talk more, and I do hope that you will come to other conferences as well. But now I would like to kindly ask you to give the concluding remarks. What can the scientific communities be useful, and what is your vision of the opportunities to strengthen Ukraine jointly? Just a final statement of everyone, and then we could take a few questions from Q&A session, and then take a coffee and proceed with other communication. See, I am never insulted when they call me bureaucrat, because I do believe in bureaucracy and the civil service. I never say whether the decisions made by the government correct or wrong. I just take it for fulfillment. And if they say that the money is to be allocated to this direction, that direction, no, this is not my decision to make, and I have my own area of responsibility, which is huge. So we as humans, yes, we may have our opinions, or even as experts we may have opinions, but it doesn't matter as long as you fulfill the function of the state. And clearly that in the context, what the society can give, well, the society can give a lot. I have a few examples, very brief examples, what we have changed in the archival sphere. And for a long time, the archives were discredited or robbed. There was even the question whether or not the archives can store the heritage with that approach. And when the researchers find some archival documents in the circulation somewhere on platforms, we verify whether or not it was stolen. If stolen, that we have a clear interaction with the law enforcement. And there are many cases where people would find out that it was stolen one day, and then they would voluntarily put it back. But if it was not stolen, and according to its value, can be part of archive, I have purchased tens of documents and just gave it to the archives, and many other people did that. So that's when the society changes its attitude to archives and how the trust is built. Our next ambitious step, and here I would like to agree with Mr. Ivan, that there are different opportunities, ideas, negotiations with donors and other things, but gradually from different directions like this, we need to do more. We need AI. We need to put the dream of all the researchers into practice, for them to operate as Google, like you just enter the word and you will find the one that's necessary for the research. Obviously, that all of the language models, they require, of course, training, indexation, and so on. And we are thinking on how to engage society for this work, like the work that will be needed for training. We have good practices of simple donations. If you don't know, on our website we have the charity account, and many Ukrainian colleagues and our foreign colleagues who work in archives, and some small share of the society, apart from the donations made for the army, they also donated to us. And using this money, we have reconstructed 2 shelters, underground shelters, that could be used for the urgency evacuation of the archives. So the interaction is simple and straightforward, but it starts with the main thing. And I remember, like 6.5 years ago, when I took this position, I made each archive to have social media pages. So like the public councils and all of this. That's good, but you need to also keep the dialogue with the society. Thank you. So the role of UNESCO may lie in keep on advocating for Ukraine, the heritage of Ukrainian culture, as part of agenda on the highest political levels. UNESCO, organization with a value added, and what I mean is that we facilitate the partnerships between business and cultural institutions, between scientific institutions and educational ones. And we already have many successful cases of cooperation in Ukraine. Like Alla spoke about the Institute of Archaeology, with Kiev Mohyla Academy, Odessa Archaeological Museum, and all of these cases, they are successful because this is the contribution to the future of the young experts, as we are engaging students to our projects, not only from the theoretical point of view, but practically and emotionally, to work at the facility, to work with the museums, with fund collections, because the educational establishments, they have huge resources to help bodies of the government bodies, which unfortunately lack the human resources. They can do the inventory of the city building, for example, without which you cannot have the proper plans of management plans, and to prioritize the most vulnerable city construction or urban development. Another thing which is to be yet developed is the bilateral cooperation between the institutions, scientific institutions, both in Ukraine and abroad. And we plan to keep on scaling up the initiatives. It should not just be, one-time assistance or support, but we need to scale up the developed initiatives for them in the future to bring a more systemic approach to recovery. And during such scaling up, we are engaging young experts under the coordination of the experienced experts working on the sites to do its comprehensive restoration. and recovery. And dear colleagues, if there are any questions, you can raise your hand, or you may discuss this with the coffee in your hand. Yes, because they are showing me that that we have to take a break probably. So maybe the last statement, because archaeologists may either bury or dig out. Okay, my statement then. I will be brief. It seems to me that all responsible bodies, both on the legislative level and the executive level, all the bureaucratic lines. By the way, I don't see bureaucracy as something that's bad. It just should work properly. So everyone has to develop the adequate attitude to archaeological heritage of our state. And this is the heritage that cannot be restored. It cannot be rebuilt as a building. So my wish is at least this cadency of the Ministry of Culture would start working on the comprehensive list of the sites of Ukraine. There are many developments, but they are still far from what we need to have in place. Thank you. Thank you so much, dear colleagues. Thank you for having agreed to allocate your time and also emotions after this night. And I hope that we will meet in this composition or a different one. So let's have a coffee now. I will be the bad police officer, but we need to follow the agenda. No coffee after this panel discussion. It will be after the next one. So I think we can take a few questions from the audience, and then we'll proceed to the next session. Where should we send our initiatives on preservation and development of the places of cultural heritage which are less famous, maybe, or less popular? Maybe the construction of some museums or Ivan, that's probably the question for you, because if you refer to local level, so in the scale of the regions, then your first vis-a-vis is the regional administration. And then if that doesn't work, then you have to think through. So if you speak about the construction of the museum, exactly, because the Ministry of Culture takes care of the national level, right? At first. What do you mean to refer to do what? To develop the sites, territories, communities, for example, to create some new places. I will give you an answer that's honest. The right answer to this question is the following. Of course, you have to go to the Ministry of Culture. You can text me. I will give you my phone number. You can write on the website or in many other ways that you can address this. We are ready for cooperation and interaction. And in fact, there are many ideas we are trying to help out with and to implement. But part of the truth is also that
Питання не в брак.
it's not about lack of ideas, but in capability to put them into practice in the framework of the level of salaries the colleagues referred to earlier. The number of resources is limited, and there are many priorities. That's why my question was, what is your aim? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Because we all want to keep on developing the heritage, the cities and sites. But the question is, how do we do that? And where are the resources that can make it possible? Yes, that can help us act and achieve the goal. I'll be happy to talk to you about your goals, but we need to have the understanding first, because quite often people come to our ministry with some genius ideas, but the truth is that most part of these genius ideas were written 30 years ago, and they are known to everyone. And then there were reasons why they were not implemented 30 years ago, maybe some structural changes or other, or we cannot develop all of them at the same time. We have at least 5 national museums that haven't been finished yet. And in the city center, and we cannot build them all at the same time, which is also part of the truth, where we cannot build 10 big national complexes at the same time. But how many can we do? Yes, and how do we prioritize them? If we are ready to discuss this with everyone, and how do we then, what expectations then there should be? That's not an easy conversation, but it's very important. So I'm answering this question in a bit different way, but since I just feel like this is another important part of the answer. You said, where do we go to? Going to the ministry, you need to understand the landscape, what's happening on another side of it. Yes, you should come to us, and because there are many interesting ideas, new ideas, and new projects appear. There is one wonderful initiative that has a big lot for the exhibition projects. So in the framework of this big-scale presidential initiative, finally, the state gives support to establish exhibition projects. And this is the opportunity for all museums to establish wonderful, new, modern exhibitional projects. There are museums that are being built today. Yesterday, I was in Yahidne, and there they are building up new museum memorial complex. So there are some things that are happening, but the system that is in charge of it all, it operates per rather complex algorithms, and you need to have the understanding how it all operates. Thank you so much. We can talk to you in more details during the break. If you give more specific question, maybe we can advise you a more specific algorithm then. Thank you, dear colleagues. Dmitro then. Good day. My name is Dmitro Ivanov. I represent Khanivshchina, the state sanctuary Takhtanerevo, and my question is for Diana and for Ivan. Attention as well. So it's been 25 years when 3 institutions that exist in our, the Kanevsky, Shankivsky sanctuary and Takhtanerev sanctuary are working on making the unique natural Kanev mountains site to be represented as the facility of the UNESCO site. There is like a scientific reasoning behind it. I mean, according to the opinion of the researchers, this object could be suitable for that nomination. We are now actively working, and thank you to Kateryna for helping us a lot with this. We are working on, making it a much bigger project. But the question is, can we count on the support of the UNESCO office in promoting this work and at least teach us how to do it correctly and assess the facility we see as suitable on the professional level, and to learn to do it right.
Thank you for your question. First, I would like to outline the UNESCO's responsibility areas, because UNESCO representative office in Ukraine, it's not in its competence to deal with nominations, appointments, or provide consultative services. They deal with the World Heritage objects, and that's the headquarters of UNESCO in Paris. And if you need any technical assistance, like experts involving some international experts in preparing to be nominated, you can send applications to the International Assistance Fund. They have deadline till the 31st of October. You can send an application for assistance to develop the nomination. Through the Ministry of Culture, through official channels, you can address for consultation if you need any assistance in terms of how exactly the dossier is being shaped from the Ministry of Nominations. if necessary, to help, if it is necessary to conduct some online meeting. From our side, we can help you construct this bridge, but everything related to nominations, it's all through the ministry, as it is the main institution responsible for that. On our side, we can provide technical assistance, but I would advise you to send a request to the International Fund. The answer to that is the same as to the previous. You know, the procedure, all the objects, all the sites have gone through that. Then we can go in more detail where and when you need to address. So far, the key thing in any event, in any of those issues, to have a task for yourself, to understand where we are going to attain. If it's a nomination for UNESCO, I will not repeat the exact name. It was Tripilia something. That was the future nomination. It was a very good example. Everything is more complicated in your case because there are different actors. We will speak with you separately. Thank you, colleagues. Now we have to give the floor to the following panel. Now, availing the opportunity, I would like to tell you more about our center and how this idea emerged and where we're going to move on top of this strategic framework. Thank you, colleagues, for your time.